Module Chamesh Nikud Arba. This module will not introduce any additional Jonah episodes or related vocabulary lists. Segment Chamesh Nikud Arba Nikud Alef. Additional Yiktol meanings. This is a very important module as it will round out your appreciation of the capabilities latent within the Yiktol. In this segment, you will be able to nuance your communication with elements such as ability, possibility, or obligation. Up to this point, we've concentrated on using the Yiktol conjugation to express plans about the future, firm plans. We call this the future indicative. We see this illustrated in what Hadag Hagadol said when he learned that he soon would be free of his internal passenger. He said, Batahomot ered, lechem rav emtza, kol hayom ochal. All of these were firm plans about the future, known as future indicative. However, as we study the Hebrew Bible, we discover that the Yiktol is not limited to this tone conveying future certainties. In fact, there are times when the Yiktol must pertain to the past based on the context, or pertain to the present, not the future. Not only so, but we even find the Yiktol being used to move beyond mere fact-telling to convey messages which in English would require auxiliary words like may or should, words like can or must, or customarily would. This governs the zone that we might consider potentiality, not the zone of the indicative. To acquaint you with these various connotations of the Yiktol, this segment is divided into 4 parts. The first will help us explore the fact that the Yiktol is not limited to future, but can also govern the past or present tense. Then we'll move to Part 2, where we'll treat potentiality and purpose options. In Part 3, we'll take a step back and consider how it is that these various meanings may be embraced by one form, the Yiktol. And in Part 4, finally, you'll find some suggestions for navigating the various meanings available to you within the Yiktol. Let's begin with Part 1, tense options within the Yiktol. Here in Part 1, we'll step through the 3 tenses. Part 1.1 will deal with future tense. Part 1.2 will give illustration of the Yiktol when clearly the meaning must be past. And Part 1.3 will give illustrations where the Yiktol must have a present tense meaning. Before proceeding with Part 1.1, it will be important to point out why certain words are rendered with bold font and why other words are rendered with italics. Take, for example, the excerpt from Psalm 23. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Notice that the words lo echsar are in bold, and the corresponding words translating that phrase are also in bold. The Lord is my shepherd. As a result, I will not be in want. That portion is in bold. This is intended to draw your attention to where the Yiktol verb is located, first in the Hebrew, and then what is the corresponding translation phrase into English. This is what we're concentrating on. What about the use of italics? Notice that the words as a result are italicized in the translation column. This is to point out what is the nuance which is provided by the Yiktol, a nuance which is the particular insight of the explanation that's being given. You will not find those 3 words as a result in the Hebrew. Rather, they are encompassed by the Yiktol. So please draw your attention first to the bold type, both in Hebrew and in English, and then move your attention to the italicized. This is the way to make optimal use of the insights that this explanation is providing. In the far left column, labeled Description, you will see what are the features which are being targeted by this particular explanation. So, for example, in this case, notice that it's future time. Notice that it's indicating a relationship between prior circumstance, the Lord is my shepherd, and then the ensuing consequence, not being in want. Let's turn our attention then to Part 1.1, the Yiktol with future tense meanings. we're already acquainted with the fact that yiktol often and generally conveys future tense meanings. What you may not realize, however, is that when a statement about the future, such as, I shall not be in want, is juxtaposed with a statement about the past or present circumstance, such as, the Lord is my shepherd, we would do well to weigh the possibility that that future statement, I shall not be in want, should be recognized as an outgrowth of the past or present circumstance, that is, the Lord being my shepherd. Let's read the Hebrew expression from Psalm 23, verse 1. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Now we come to part 1.2, the yiktol with past tense meanings. Let's begin by reading them. The first example is from Genesis chapter 2, verse 6a. Ve'ed ya'aleh min haaretz. Ve'ed ya'aleh min haaretz. And the next example from 1 Samuel 1:10. Vatit palel al Adonai uvacho tivkeh. Vatit palel al Adonai uvacho tivkeh. Begin by noticing that the two verbs in bold type are both yiktols. From Genesis 2, ya'aleh. From 1 Samuel 1, tivkeh. However, in each instance, the meaning clearly must be past tense. What then is the reason for the writer choosing yiktol? Why did the writer not simply use a customary past tense form, one which we'll be learning about in Unit 6? The reasoning is this. By using the yiktol in ya'aleh, the writer is able to tap into a connotation of repeated or customary action. This is conveyed by the yiktol, but it would not be conveyed by the simple past tense that you're going to learn about in Unit 6. Consequently, ya'aleh in Genesis 2:6 can be appropriately understood as meaning a mist or stream used to come up, not simply came up, but used to come up, would come up repeatedly or in customary fashion. In the case of 1 Samuel 1:10, the writer tapped into a connotation latent within the yiktol with tivkeh, that connotation being incipient action, that is the onset or the beginning of a particular action. In this case, referring to Hannah weeping, in particular the fact that she began to weep. Now you may be wondering, how do we know that the first is repeated or customary action and the second example is incipient? The way we go about this process is by becoming aware of the menu of options and then selecting what fits best. The current segment is devoted to helping you become aware of the menu of options latent within yiktol. Here are two more examples. These are produced to acquaint you with particular words, the presence of which, combined with a yiktol, signals routinely the past tense. The first word is az, followed by yiktol. The second is terem, or beterem, followed by yiktol. First example comes from Exodus 15. Az yashir Moshe. Yashir is yiktol, but clearly it must be past. The fact that it's preceded by az tips us off to this fact that we should recognize the ensuing yiktol as past. Az yashir Moshe. At that time Moses sang, not will sing. The second comes from Joshua 3, verse 1. Vayalinu sham terem ya'avoru. Vayalinu sham terem ya'avoru. Notice that ya'avoru, which happens to be in pause, is indeed a yiktol, but clearly it does not mean they will cross over, but rather they did cross over. We are helped to recognize this by the fact that it's preceded by the word terem, which means before. So far, we've observed that the yiktol operates as future. At other times, it operates as past. Now in part 1.3, we'll find some examples where the yiktol must have a sense of the present tense. The first example comes from Genesis 32. Al kain lo yochlu v'nei Yisrael et gid. Al kain lo yochlu v'nei Yisrael et gid. Notice that yochlu is clearly yiktol, but the sense rather seems to be present. Therefore, the Israelites routinely do not eat the tendon. So the sense of a habitual present tense is conveyed here by the yiktol. The second example comes from Psalm 19. Yom leyom yabia omer. Yom leyom yabia omer. Notice that yabia is yiktol, but a better sense than future would render this as a present customary activity. Day after day, it, that is the heavens, customarily, repeatedly, pours forth speech. The third example comes from Psalm 27, verse 7. Shema Adonai koli ekra. Our focused verb is ekra. Notice that it's yiktol. I will call. However, in this situation, it makes more sense to regard it as an incipient present. I begin at this time. I am beginning to call. Hear, O Lord, as I begin to call aloud. Please continue with the video labeled Part 2 of segment 5 Nikud Arba Nikud Aleph.